We're here at the Hollywood Palladium. It's JP with Clutch. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic. I hear the tour's going well. The new album is in the can.
It is.
Fantastic. Now, take us back a little bit. When you were coming up, who were like your musical heroes? Who really excited you to want to play music yourself?
Well, there's one show in particular that really knocked me out. Seeing the Bad Brains at the 930 Club.
Yeah.
And I was just fresh out of high school.
Okay.
And by that point, I'd started to see shows, and I was definitely into metal and hardcore, punk rock. And seeing Bad Brains really let me know what a proper band was supposed to do. You know, that made me want to do what I do to this day.
So just the energy, just the intensity of the show.
Absolutely, the energy of the show, the way they were able to transform that nightclub into what my opinion was a church that night. The energy in the room was really amazing, and to watch a band play with such conviction and really play well too. You know, they were excellent players compared to the other players that were playing similar kinds of music back then. Really, for me, it was a different kind of a band. It had nothing to do with punk rock or hardcore or any of that stuff. I think the Bad Brains is probably one of the greatest bands in all of rock and roll.
Wow, it's amazing. So from there, you were already playing, or you decided right at that point?
Yeah, definitely already playing by that point. And growing up in Washington, D.C. was a great place for a young musician, a young drummer especially, because not only did we have that history of hardcore and punk rock happening there, but there was also a great go-go scene.
Oh, yeah.
And so Washington, D.C. go-go is something that's really never left the area. There has been some hits along the way, but for the most part, this is a music and more specifically a rhythm that's very indigenous to Washington, D.C. And I had the opportunity to see some great bands like Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, like Rare Essence, Experience Unlimited, and so those influences for me were just as important as seeing the hardcore stuff.
Of course. And I understand on the new album there's some elements of funk and a little bluesy touches. Yeah. We tried to branch out a little bit. We've definitely played those styles before, but Earth Rocker I think was a little bit more linear approach. I think we were really trying to make something that was sort of very upbeat and had a lot of energy that would flow throughout the record. I think this record's going to have a little bit more twists and turns. There is more of a funk element on some of the stuff, and some bluesier things as well. So you got the monster groove in there, and awesome. Now I know you guys are pretty much doing a lot of DIY. You're your own label, setting a lot of this up, internally. What are the advantages of being able to kind of chart your own course and give the fans, the undiluted, passion from you?
I think the greatest advantage is that we can spend time on our music and making music the way that we want to. Certainly running your own label comes with a lot of responsibility, but the energy that's spent in those kinds of things is very positive. Where back in the day when we were on the labels, there was a lot of conversations that we had to have with people at the labels that had really nothing to do with music, and that was frustrating. Having your own label really allows you to operate in the way that you want to, and for us that gives us a lot of independence, and we're very fortunate to have just a few people to run this thing for us.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now I know you at the core with Tim and Dan, started this thing, and then Neil joined you shortly thereafter. What is it that's kept the band together? Because you look at a lot of other bands and it's a revolving door.
Right.
What is it about these guys that you guys have been so persevering?
Well, I think there was really two goals when we started the band, so those were to play the best shows that we could play and to make the best records that we could make. And the idea of making a career in rock and roll was not on the agenda at all. The bands that we looked up to, like the Bad Brains, like Fugazi, they weren't bands that packed arenas. They weren't on the radio, and so for us, we realized this is not something that's going to be financially a win. And we were all on the same page. And I think that makes the difference to this day, because luckily we've been able to make a career out of this thing. But really, when you boil it down, we're the same four guys trying to do those same things, just trying to play good shows and make good records.
Sure. So what keeps it fresh? Now, I know you say every album you want to kind of stretch out a little bit, try some things, kind of add some new colors to the canvas.
Sure.
What approach do you take as you go into a new album?
Well, for the most part, we don't really have a sort of a master plan. We just get in there and start playing, and things happen very organically. We listen to a lot of music. We experiment a lot. One of the best things about being in this band for me is that I can get on stage and I can play whatever I want, really. Mm-hmm. And that's there's a lot of freedom in that. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, the writing process is just as free. We really try to experiment a lot. We try not to repeat ourselves. But there was one thing I think we realized during the writing of this past record. Psychic warfare is what it's going to be called. Mm-hmm. During the writing process, we realized sometimes things are going to sound like other Clutch songs because it's the same four guys playing the same instruments. Yeah. And I think that was a little bit of an epiphany for us, and I think we're at peace with that now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, in your tenure in this band, you've literally seen the music business completely reshape itself, and we're in a very much more, digital streaming, independent, world. I mean, Capitol Records up here might as well be some condos. Right. This whole area in here had a lot of labels and stores that are gone, but you guys live on. You're packing the Palladium tonight. You're on a successful tour. You said some of the upsides about doing it your way, but how do you guys look at that? I guess the same four guys, you got a little bit of a survival mode, that you're a bit of a gang. You can kind of hang together while the whole, sometimes, infrastructure around you changes. But what is just your perspective, having seen, I hate to call it the good old days, but I mean the evolution or the constant progression of this business?
Well, I think you nailed it. I mean, it is a completely different climate than it was, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Yeah. And I think there is a little bit of that sort of sense of a gang between the four of us, because the 90s were a tough time for us. We bounced from label to label, and we quickly realized that although somebody at the label might seem cool, these people might talk about music. At the end of the day, they're just doing their job, and I think we realized that early on. So we kind of have a little bit of a survival instinct, I think, because of that. Yeah. And that's good, especially in this day and age, because you have to think on your feet. You have to really, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. Things are changing by the minute, and it also puts more emphasis on the live show, and we are very comfortable with that, because that's been the thing that's really made this band grow over the years. Right. So, in some regards, it's more difficult for bands, but I do think the bands who can get out there and really play, put on a good show, translate that energy to the audience, those are the bands who are really going to rise to the top, I think.
Sure. I mean, taking MTV and radio out of the equation, a lot of it has to come down to your music and the live show. Right. And if you can excel at that, none of that other stuff really had much to do with it.
Right.
Now, you're on tour, obviously, with Mastodon and Graveyard. Why is this a great package for the fans out there?
Well, we've known the Mastodon guys for quite some time. They toured with us in the early days when they were just coming up, and in a lot of ways, I see similarities between Mastodon music and Clutch music. I think we probably listen to a lot of the same kinds of things coming up, and they've always had a very hands-on approach in that they get out there and they really, really play. Great players, great band. It's great to have those guys. So there's a lot of camaraderie, and I think the show works too for the fans as well. Graveyard is a band that we've toured with before as well. Another band I think works very hard and has a very original kind of a sound, and that's key these days.
Amazing. You guys come from all different parts of the country, but all comes together on stage. Now, what you talked about growing up in DC, but being based in that Maryland area, obviously very much in the news right now with what's going on in Baltimore. You know, what's your take on that, and why Baltimore?
Well, I can tell you that we've recorded a couple records in Baltimore, and those studios were not in the nicest neighborhoods. It was pretty rough, and it was amazing to see rows and rows of beautiful row homes abandoned, burned out, and there's a lot of struggle there. It's you know, it's easy to look at the television and say, you know, why are those people doing that? You know, but if you come from that neighborhood, your perspective on what the right thing to do is might be not what everybody else agrees with. It is a very depressed area, and it needs help.
So lack of jobs, a lot of drugs, and a lot of problems.
All that stuff, you know, and that's not good in any town. You know, it's what's happening in Baltimore is I think probably representative of what's happening in a lot of cities.
Now, where do we go from here? Because I know you got the new album coming out in the fall. I know it's hard to predict the future, but where's the direction of the band going from that album forth? Is there a bucket list? Some other things you're still trying to do?
Well, we'll take the summer off, and that'll be good. We'll have a few things here and there I think we're doing, but really the real tour will start again in the fall, and we'll go hard. We'll go all through next year. We are very lucky in that there's a lot of places that want to see Clutch shows. So I anticipate at least 2 U.S. tours, and I'm sure we're going to head over to Europe, Australia, and maybe we'll make some headway in Japan. That's been sort of a tough nut for us to crack, but we're up for the challenge, and maybe this record will be the one that sort of makes an impression over there.
Sure. Well, I know music is a universal language, but when you go over to some of these European or Asian countries, and you know, not everybody speaks your language, what amazes you the most of the acceptance of the music?
Just the fact that those folks are just singing along and they know every single word, and you know, it really goes to show, you know, as you say, music is a universal language. The passion from the fans helps us do the best show that we can, and we try to give that energy right back to the crowd. And you know, it's playing in Hamburg, Germany these days is not that much different than playing in Columbus, Ohio. You know, once you get up there and you start playing, people just have a great time and they sing along to the music, and I think the audiences are more similar than they are different.
Yeah, they love the energy of the music. They just want to release. They want to have a good time, and you know, it's very little difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So all that you've seen through the business, and even though the business around you have changed, what advice do you give to that young drummer, that young garage band, a young creative person coming up that might have a different landscape out there, but internally, what do they need to focus on to really have a shot in this business?
Well, I think that if you are in this business to make money, it might be the wrong business to be in. You need to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. For me, that means playing with people who want to make music. Certainly other people want to form bands for other reasons, and that's all well and good, but you know, I think it's most important to focus on the music and focus on your instrument. You know, you have to practice, spend time with that instrument, honor that instrument, and study everything you can about it. These days, getting out there and playing live is everything, so you need all the tools in your arsenal to put on the best show that you can. So for me, that means studying and practicing. I do that every day.
And what's the importance of the songwriting? Because, you know, the energy is one thing, but 10, 20, 30 years later, it's those songs that stand up. So what advice do you give to the bands to really concentrate on writing great songs?
Well, I think you have to be true to yourself, you know, true to who you are as a player, and not be concerned with trying to sound like other things that might be popular. You know, certainly there are, you know, we can take influence from all of our favorite bands and players, but ultimately it's really it's important to find your sound and find who you are, not just in a songwriting sense, but as a player too. find your identity, and the more identity that you have, the more individuality your music's going to have.
And to those that are just hearing about Clutch, because I'm sure every tour you go, you're amazed at these younger people that are showing up.
Yeah.
So those that are watching this right now, just coming on the radar, just hearing about Clutch, what can you tell them to check out your band and come out to a show?
Well, just come out and see the show. You know, we change the set list every night. I think that makes for a more exciting musical experience. We don't play the same songs in a row and say the same things in a row. Every night is going to be different than the last. So the musical experience that we share there that night is not going to be repeated again in another town. And I think that's what's special about seeing a Clutch show, and it certainly makes it more fun for me as a drummer to play in a band like that.
Well, JP, we appreciate your time.
Certainly.
Looking forward to rocking the plate in tonight.
Thank you very much.